the way the banks determine that is based on the cash flow of the practice. So they say after all the bills are paid,
Yep.
including a fair market rate to the doctors that provide the care, what's left over to service the debt on a loan? The contribution to the community and the good feelings that you get in building something that's your own is, in my opinion, unsurpassed. But back to your point of resources, I mean, there are tools, there's knowledge. I mean, Ali, I am spending hours a day with artificial intelligence. It is completely exploded in my world, and I'm building all kinds of amazing tools I occasionally will have a phone call with an OD who brought on an associate prematurely, or they didn't have the infrastructure in place to support them, and the associate's wage simply cannibalizes their owner's income. And that happens, and so you have to be thoughtful about when to do it. I always start with
Welcome back to Ali Off the Record. I'm your host, Ali Urumchian, and today we're joined by Dr. Mick Kling, who's an optometrist, a practice owner, an advisor. He's everything, and he's been doing it for decades, helping businesses scale. So Dr. Kling is the founder of Envision Optometry. It's one of the leading practices in San Diego and serves as the senior director of professional development for Vision Source, where he works very closely with independent practice owners, focusing on growth, leadership, and practice strategy. Today, we're going to talk about what it really takes to build a strong optometry practice, how to grow it without losing control, and the key decisions that separate a practice from being okay to being absolutely fantastic. Mick is an absolute expert, and we're lucky to have him. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hi, Mick. Welcome to Ali Off the Record. I am so excited to have you on.
Thank you, Ali. What a privilege to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, thanks, Mick. Yeah, you and I go way, way back, and I've had the pleasure of, lecturing with you on stage at a lot of different places, of course, and, at Vision Source headquarters too, of course, to audience members every 4 months about, and it's been such a pleasure to be able to do that, but to be able to impact so many doctors as they transition either in or out. But tell the audience a little bit about your history. And obviously you're an OD in San Diego, but tell us a little bit more so the audience knows a little bit more about what you do, and then we can jump into the meat of things.
Yeah. So thanks again for having me. So just a little bit of background. So I have a practice in San Diego, single location. The practice that I have now is really uh, an aggregation of multiple practices that I purchased over the years. And for many years in California, you could only own up to 2 locations. And so my strategy for growing was really acquiring smaller practices around me and then just rolling them up into my existing location. And so that's really how I've been able to grow the practice that I have now. But I started with one location and bought a second, bought a third, and then we just sort of went from there. During that journey, I've had lots of different work experiences. I did a residency in ocular disease and spent several years working for 2 ophthalmologists here in San Diego. Myself and one of the ophthalmologists started a laser company back in the 90s when LASIK was first coming out. And we grew that business and we sold it to TLC Vision, which was one of the big
Mm-hmm.
LASIK providers. At the time, I became one of the clinical directors there at the San Diego facility. And then I just rolled back into private practice. And then as I sort of got into later years, I started to doing just some one-off consulting. And you mentioned Vision Source. I've been a member for 20 years and started doing some more consulting work for Vision Source and started doing some education, some courses. We created the Business of Optometry curriculum, where we teach, among other things, just basic business acumen. And those courses have just continued to evolve, which is now what I do full time for Vision Source is help with the education and do some other things around leadership. But that led to you and I doing the practice
Yeah.
physician course. that we do together, which is really one of my favorite things to do, not just because it's with you, but I love having an audience of buyers and sellers and us trying to have this conversation of like, how do we transition this practice? So
Yeah.
that's been my journey. I'm out of patient care pretty much have been for the last couple years, and I'm just working full time consulting and doing my work with Vision Source.
Yeah. Yeah, you are at this point, I feel like that a lot of ODs want to be in, which is they want to have a very successful practice, but they also sometimes want to do other things as well, whether it's teaching or being able to help the industry or consult on their own. And you've been able to do it really well, I think, because of how you've built the practice and how you've set up your management structure. And I see that a lot when we have seminars together. A lot of questions that people ask you are about that, about leadership and structure and whatnot. So I want to kind of jump into that because you know you are you you're a first generation OD,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So as you have gone into the practice and as you started out, now looking back after all these years, what were some early decisions, Mick, that you made, knowingly or unknowingly, that you look back and you go, man, that was a really smart decision when I was first starting out?
Yeah, so one of the things that I discovered really, really early on in my career is that I did not enjoy patient care as much as many of my colleagues did. Like a
Mm,
lot of ODs, they just want to be in the exam room and do eye exams, which is great. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. It just wasn't my favorite thing to do. What I really loved doing was sitting down and looking at spreadsheets
yeah.
and thinking about, how to improve the business. So the first thing I sort of realized was that my DNA was a little bit more hardwired toward operational
Hmm.
management than it was being a glaucoma expert.
Sure.
And so that was kind of a pretty important pivotal point. But because I went to school and I had to pay back student loans, I had to be in the exam room for really many, many years. The second realization I had was that there were only 2 things that I absolutely had to do in my office, and those 2 things were, if I were doing the eye exam, I had probably should be the one to look inside the eyeball,
Mhm.
okay? I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't delegate that, I have to look inside
Sure.
the eyeball, and the second thing was, if I'm gonna do the eye exam, I probably should be the one to sign the chart.
Sure.
I can't delegate signing the chart.
Right.
But literally, Ali, besides those 2 things,
Yeah.
there was not one single thing in my practice that I couldn't delegate to somebody else. And so
Mhm.
I started this journey of just bringing people along with me to help do the things that I did not enjoy doing or
Mhm.
that I wasn't very good at.
Yeah.
And as I started to offload some of those tasks and build a team around me, I started to develop some confidence that not only did I not have to be the person to do it, but in fact, I realized that there were other people that were actually better at it than I was,
Mhm.
and that it allowed me to really just focus on the stuff that I felt like I was better at or that I actually enjoy doing. So this realization of I don't love being in the exam room. I love looking at spreadsheets. I love managing the practice. I love the operations, the practice management stuff. And I can delegate literally 99% of everything I do to somebody else was
Yeah.
a real eye opener for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight, though. You have to evolve over time to get there, but I knew that was ultimately where I wanted to be.
Yeah. Well, I think I there's so much to unpack there because one, you took the step of actually doing an introspection and deciding what you're good at, which is actually not easy to do when, like you said, you've gone through school and for so many years, right? And then you have student loans, and to come out and say, you know, I love being an OD, but not this aspect of being an OD. So I think for a lot of the audience who's listening, they feel, I think, a lot of pressure to be something that maybe they're not, right? And you, I think, made that decision early on, which is great. The second point, and I think this is even more important, believe it or not, is it didn't happen overnight.
Mhm.
You were still doing eye exams for many, many years until you got to the point where you said, you know what? Now I can afford, right,
Mhm.
to hire somebody to do this aspect of the business. Oh, by the way, now maybe a year later, I can afford to do this other, I can give away this other aspect of the business. And slowly but surely you pulled yourself out of it. So that's really important.
Yeah, we one of the courses that I teach with colleague Lori Sorensen is the course is called Ease. We teach it to our Vision Source members, and it's really about how do you scale your business. And one of the things that we realize is that some practices really get big and multiple locations, multiple million in revenue, and some practices get stuck around the 800,000 900,000
Yeah.
revenue side. And so we started to study like how did we get to where we are? Why are some practices able to do it? And why are others not? And it really comes down to your ability to delegate. And so we started this journey of sort
Mm,
of understanding what it takes to scale. And so we teach this course. And one of the fundamental principles of this course is learning to systematize everything that you do.
I love it.
And part of the problem is many single location, single doctor owners try to hold on to everything, and so it limits their growth to their own capacity.
Hmm.
They can
Hmm.
only expand up to the point where they're capable of delivering the care, whether that be the care to the patient or the care to the practice. But building something that systematized now makes it infinitely scalable. In
Yeah.
other words, you now are no longer limited to your own capacity, but it's infinite where you can take this. And so this idea of building something that doesn't need you is kind of foreign to some people. It's like,
Yeah.
well, why would I build a business that doesn't need me?
Right.
Precisely because you want to be able to do other things. And so
Yeah.
with that mindset, I really started to approach my practice like, how do I create systems so I'm not so key employee dependent?
Yeah.
Because every employee eventually leaves
Yeah.
for one
That's right.
reason or another. But how do I build systems so that if somebody is unplugged, I can plug somebody else in, the system continues to operate. And that's what allows me to go travel, go spend time with you, go do the lecturing, not worry so much about the business because I know we have systems and controls in place to make sure that it continues to function the way I feel like it needs to.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And for those that are listening, these were two separate distinct things. One is figuring out what I call, internally when we talk about it at HR for Health or the law firm, it's we call it the unique skill. What is your unique skill that no one else has, and how do we take advantage of that, right? And make sure you're in the best place. But then the second point is the systems. Once you have the unique skill and you're plugging other people in to different roles, making it systemized, like you said, to the point where they are, if they leave for personal or professional reasons, you can plug someone else in. So that's huge. Now, I do find it funny. I mean, knowing you for the past, 20 years almost, I would say I know this about you, but you're very unique in the OD world because you do like spreadsheets, and most ODs are definitely not, spreadsheet
Totally.
lovers. So when it comes to that side of it, um, as you teach these courses and as you talk to all these doctors nationwide, what are the gaps that you see they have that you would tell a young OD that they should look out for and try to fill early on? Like, what are the biggest gaps you see?
Yeah, so, I think we're already dealing with a kind of a self-selected biased group of people, right? The personality types that go to optometry school, dental school, medical school really are not accounting people. They don't
Sure.
have that mindset. And so we're
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
a doctor mindseted person and we're saying you need to love a spreadsheet. Well, that doesn't work very well because we're already dealing with people that just are not hardwired to do that. And so acknowledging that that is what we're dealing with and that those may not be your most desirous things to do and your best skill sets is fine. It's not that there's something wrong with you because you don't love spreadsheets, but I think it is important to acknowledge that that is the reality that we're dealing with. On the flip side, if you're going to own a business, there's some minimum basic business acumen that you need to have to be successful in your business. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics report has loves to show these reports that 50% of all businesses that get started fail after 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's because people go into business because they're passionate about something,
Right.
but they don't have the business acumen skills to be successful. They're passionate about the widget they're making or selling, but they forget they've got to manage cash flow. They've got to manage people. They have to have systems in place to be successful. And so when those things aren't built, then the cash runs out.
So cash flow management is a big part of it for sure. But a lot of optometrists will say, "Look, I'm super busy in my practice. I do a lot of things." But this being busy and doing a lot of things doesn't necessarily mean that they're profitable, right? Or that they're growing. So double clicking on what you just said, how do you define a healthy practice?
Yeah, this has it's been such a lesson for me personally because if you would ask me that question 15 years ago, I would
Yeah,
have given you a completely financial answer. It's
sure,
all about, revenue growth, um, profitability, managing our metrics, all that kind of stuff. One of the things I've learned over the last, I'd say pretty recently, 5 to 6 years, is defining a successful practice can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And financial success is simply one of the ways to measure success. Now, I would argue a quite important one because if you
sure,
can't pay the bills and you run out of money, you don't have a
right,
business anymore. So you have to be profitable. But defining success in other ways, such as healthiness of your team culture, happiness of your patients that you're taking care of, providing for your community a service that's needed. All of those things I think embody how we would define a successful practice. But from a purely financial standpoint, in one of the courses that I teach, uh, based on Mike Michalowicz's book Profit First, one of the things we talk about is being profitable is the most fundamental foundational thing required because that's what sustains you as a business.
sure.
And so ultimately being successful means you stay in business. And
Hmm.
the only way you can stay in business is if you generate more than you spend.
Sure,
And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of practice owners, particularly healthcare, because we have the misfortune of being in an industry where we deliver care services first and we get paid second. And
right.
it's all about timing. And if you don't have systems in place to make sure you're getting reimbursed by third party payers, you're getting claims out on time, you can really get upside down on the cash flow and the timing of things. And so, um, some of it just comes down to, again, creating systems to making sure that you're driving profitability so that you're sustaining your business.
So Mick, some people that are listening to this are going to hear you say that, and they're going to think cost cutting, right? Like, let me cut my costs as much as possible. But you and I both know no one's ever gotten to a place of prosperity by just saving a few dollars here and there, right? Like that's it's an important part of the equation, but it's not the one that really sends you to that next level. So when you say, like, you got to be profitable and you've got to look at your cash flow and make sure you're sustainable business, like, what are you looking at? Like, if someone's plateaued right now and they don't know what to do next, what's the first thing you would tell them? Like, what should they be looking at?
Yeah, one of the misconceptions about running a practice is that I can just grow my way out of my current situation.
Sure.
So if I'm, an $800,000 practice, if I could just get to 1 million, things will get better. If I can just get to 2 million, things will get better. The problem is, as our revenue goes up, our expenses trail right along with it. So our cost
Hmm.
of goods go up because they're generally a percentage of
Yep.
our revenue. we have to hire more people, we have to get into a bigger building, so our facility costs go up. We have to buy more paper clips and more reams of paper, so
Right.
as
Right.
your business scales and grows in revenue, your expenses typically trail right along with it. So having again, back to the basic business acumen, having the knowledge of, well, what should my metrics be telling me? What should I, number one, be measuring? And number two, what should they be telling me is the most fundamental, foundational thing that you can possibly do. Um, Tonight, coincidentally, I'm doing a lecture for Berkeley's fourth year students.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what we're going to talk about is how to read a profit and loss statement.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
one of the most basic fundamental things that you can do to make sure that your business is operating in a healthy way. So back to your question of like, what would you do to tell somebody if they were struggling or to make sure they were profitable? It was be get really good at reading a profit and loss statement because there's so much information to tell you. Doesn't tell you everything because it doesn't tell you cash flow, but it will tell you a lot about how your business is being managed from an operation standpoint.
Mhm.
And that's critical to making sure that you're driving profitability to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if someone's hit a plateau, like you said, they're at 800,000 because we do see that, right? They've grown for many years. They're at that 800,000 range, but they want to continue growing. And like you said, it's not all about just more patients through the door. But is there one or two things that you see that you can talk about specifically where you're saying, you know what, this is the reason you've plateaued?
Yeah, so the reason you plateau is pretty logical. So, a well-utilized OD should be able to generate $1 million in practice revenue.
Okay.
Okay, that's 10 eye exams a day, $400 of revenue per exam,
Yeah.
250 days a year. If you do the math, you get a million. Now, many ODs produce way more than that,
Sure. Yeah.
but many produce less than that. But if we just agree on that one metric, one 5-day a week OD should generate a million. If you're a single doctor owner and you're the only one providing care in your practice, you've got to leave some time for administration. And if you spend a half day or a day doing administrative work, even if it's in between patients, you're probably only giving about 4 days of clinical care to your
Hmm.
practice. And
Mm.
if you use that $1 million metric, that means you're generating about $800,000 in revenue
Oh, interesting.
because you're seeing
Yeah.
patients 4 days a week. And
Sure.
so the only way to break through there is to become more efficient with the time that you are spending, delegate the administrative task to somebody else, or bring in another doctor.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
and the first two options will get you a little bit more efficiency, but eventually you're going to plateau there as well because you
Right.
yourself can only see so many patients in a day.
Yeah.
Even if you delegate 100% of the administrative tasks to somebody else, you're still kind of limited by your own clinical efforts. So if you really want to get to the next level, that's where bringing in another doctor is absolutely critical.
I love that. I love that. Now, a lot of people are already nervous of hiring other employees. They're nervous about leadership, and it sort of sounds amorphous to them. But it is a shift that an owner needs to make at some point if they want to continue growing, right? And so, like, from your experience, why do you think there's that hesitancy to want to be that leader in an office? I mean, or is it maybe not a hesitancy? Maybe it's not a skill set that they have. But what do you see being that, like, that mechanism that blocks them from wanting to do that?
I think the leadership piece goes back almost to the same thing we were talking about having basic business acumen
Mm.
skill. You
Hmm.
also need basic leadership skills. And I think, again, many of us went to school because we were passionate about a profession, not ever thinking about, okay, I've got to lead people.
Right.
And so you've got to have some basic leadership skills as well. And my favorite, thing to talk to my team about is this idea of social contagion.
Okay.
So there's in behavioral psychology, there's a theory called social contagion theory. And basically what it means is that every one of us are contagious to everybody else around us.
Hmm.
Our beliefs and attitudes and behaviors reflect on everybody else. And there's tons of data to support this. Smokers tend to hang around with other smokers.
Sure. Yeah.
Runners hang around with other runners.
Right.
People that play music hang around with other. So we love these social circles because we're contagious to one another. We feed off of each other. Well, in the workplace, we're also highly contagious with one another. And the person that is the most contagious in the building is the boss.
Right.
And so recognizing that when you have a so-called staff problem, it's really maybe a leadership problem
Right.
is a critical realization for a practice owner to come to, which is, wow, well, you know what? I'm not getting what I need from my team. Of course, I can point out some things in their behavior that I don't like, but it also really requires you to do a little self-reflection and say, what am I doing to contribute to this? Is my contagiousness, am I spreading what I want to be spreading? Or am I
Yeah.
spreading negativity as well?
Yeah.
Like, where do I fit in this?
Huge, huge. Is it bad that I don't want to be around other lawyers, Mick?
No, in fact, it's not bad at all because I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And I actually like our lawyers here. It's just everybody else that I don't want to deal
Yeah.
with.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah,
Every
no,
time
no,
I'm
I
around a lawyer, I get uh, an invoice.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's right. That's right. You have a couple outstanding ones with me. No, it's just
Yeah,
kidding.
I'm sure I do. I'm sure I do.
Oh no, no, but leadership is also one of these things that, man, it's so hard to get your arms around it, right? To your point, but it starts with attitude, like you're saying. How you come to the office, how you are Monday morning, how you are, at the end of the day. Those interactions, you're exactly right. Absolutely are contagious, and I wonder if there's a book about this actually, because I feel like I've heard that title before, but it's such an interesting concept of how you are as a leader and how it impacts the rest of your team just from a social perspective, let alone in every other regard. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think it takes a while. But by the way, there are lots of books about this topic, and I as much as I love business finance, I also love reading books about behavior, human
yeah,
behavior. I think it's
yeah,
such a fascinating topic, and it's
yeah,
been just a real journey for me because I'm not naturally a super social person. Like again, give me a spreadsheet and a
sure,
computer, and I'm happy. But you have to recognize that there are other responsibilities and there are other expectations that your team has, your patients have, and you need to be prepared with the knowledge to be wise about it. I remember years ago going through some emotional intelligence training, which I thought was fascinating because I never heard of that at the time. This was
right,
20 years ago, and thinking back about how foundational some of those messages were because it really just taught you about how
right.
to engage with other people and interact with other people. So,
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
hey,
the lights
are we at the disco part
I
of the
know, I know.
podcast?
The lights in my office just decided to go out. It's I don't know what's hold on one second. Let me turn them on. There we go. There we go. I guess I'm sitting too still, so
I thought this
okay.
was a part of the experience where we did some dancing or something.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Nobody should watch me dance, by the way. um okay, well, so so as we kind of talk through this, then one of the things that I think is really interesting about what you just described is this idea of getting out of your comfort zone, right? I mean, you gravitated towards your comfort zone, right, by saying, hey, I don't necessarily want to be a clinical OD. I want to focus on the business side more, and you've gravitated towards that. Some people, like you said, are a little bit more introverted, and so they don't necessarily want to, be out in front of their employees and others. But you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, if
Mhm.
as they say. because it's part of the job, right? It's part of the job of being an entrepreneur. But tell me a little bit about kind of your experience um, watching entrepreneurs go from school to their first job, to finally making the decision, to wanting to buy an office. I mean, you're involved in a lot of transitions with Vision Source, so you see that, right? And as you've heard me say from the stage, I love when associates buy the practices that they're working at, because it's such a seamless process, right? It's not necessarily easy, when it comes to the legal side of things, because there's a lot of, details to be worked through, but it's seamless as far as the employees are concerned. It's seamless for the buyers, the sellers. But as you're talking to these young ODs, what are you seeing, Mick? Are you seeing them, since COVID, be excited to get into practice ownership, or are you seeing them be more nervous about practice ownership?
Yeah. So, gosh, there's a lot to unpack there, Ali. One of the thoughts I had when you were saying that is, one thing that's really important for a young OD is to remember wherever they start their career, it sets them on a trajectory somewhere.
You're right.
Okay. And now, in because we're in the season right now where the fourth years are starting to think about jobs, and
Right.
they're probably getting lots of offers for corporate jobs, for example, which is fine. We need
Yep.
corporate doctors. But if they have a desire to be a practice owner and they say to themselves, if I could just take a corporate job right now to pay off some student loans and go buy the Tesla I've been eyeing, that's great. But that sends them down a trajectory that is maybe going to land them where they don't want to be, because you're going to
Hmm.
now associate yourself with people that are in that world, in that
Sure.
framework, right? And so I always tell young ODs, don't underestimate that first job,
Right.
because that first job is going to open doors. Some of those doors are doors that you want to be open. Some of them are doors that maybe you don't want to be open, but you
Yep.
step in them because it's convenient, it's easy, it's where you wanted to be. So the most disappointing thing I see is first years entering optometry school wanting to go into private practice. By the time they get to their fourth year, they're overwhelmed with student loan debt, nervous, and they never fulfill their dream of owning their own practice.
Right.
And so there's a sentiment in the profession that, oh, nobody wants to own their own practice anymore. I don't really buy that. We're
No.
seeing so many cold start practices nowadays. The transition business, as you know, you're well deep in it. Transition business is pretty active.
Yeah.
We have a ton of sellers on the market. We have a whole generation of ODs that are selling their practices. And, I understand some are selling to private equity, but there are lots and lots of great opportunities to buy practices all across the country. So the opportunity is there. So the message is really in those early years, it's super critical the decisions that you make, because that sets you on a pathway. Just like a plane that leaves 1 degree off course, by the time it gets across the country, it's hundreds of miles away
Right.
from where it was intending to be.
Yeah.
And so I was telling them to keep that in mind. The other thought I had when you asked that question was that the difference between a struggling practice owner and an OD that's not struggling is the OD. That's
Hmm.
the only difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just the OD. It's the owner's mindset and their mentality, and that's highly, highly critical to being successful.
Yeah.
So really, I guess my message is still lots of great opportunities out there. I don't have any reason to believe that independent optometry, which is what Vision Source really stands for and fights for, is going to continue to thrive, and just really encourage that next generation to step out on the limb and take that leap of faith. There are more resources and opportunities now than there ever was 30 years ago,
Oh yeah.
when I
Oh,
started this journey.
oh, 100%, 100%. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's funny because we see the same exact thing that you're seeing, which is, um, you know, they're graduating from school, they're getting out, and they're getting different kinds of experiences because they do, they, like you said, they have debts and they have family obligations. Many are married, they have children, like they need to start earning. And so there's a lot of different positions out there available to them, whether it's, subleases, if they want to go down that road, if it's just a corporate job where they're an employee, where they don't own anything, or if they're lucky enough to get into private practice right off the bat. But as I always kind of talk to them about it, it sounds like this is what you're saying too, is you you know going and becoming an owner is a big leap. There's no doubt about that, right? It's a lot of work, but the numbers don't lie, right? To get to financial independence as an OD, especially when you have student debt and all of that, it's impossible to do it as an associate working for someone else. Like the math, the tax math, if you will, just does not work in the favor of employees when they're trying to get to that level as an OD. Like if you're not an OD and you don't have any debt, you don't have anything, it's a totally different story. But when you are, to get to that point, you got to be a practice owner. And again, to build on what you said, I think the resources is key. I mean, when you and I were first graduating and starting to work, there was nowhere near the same resources that there are now. I mean, between groups like Vision Source and online resources, and Facebook groups and other things that are available, there's a lot of places where people can go to get information. So, but I don't know if you agree with this, but I think some of this information people also take at face value, Mick, and don't question it. And that can be a problem too.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I have 2 sons. I have almost 15-year-old and I have a 16-year-old, and one of the conversations that we have at home really becoming more frequent is, like, college and what do
Sure.
you wanna be, and, of course, they're too young to really even know what they wanna do and wanna be, and we're not putting pressure on them to do that, but one thing I do tell them is that if you want financial freedom and financial independence, and really independence at all, I mean, you really have to own a business.
Hmm.
So go become a plumber, but figure out how to own the plumbing company,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
that's really the message that I think the point that you were making, which is absolutely so true. Just forget the financial rewards. The financial rewards, the ownership premium of taking the risk of owning a business far outweigh ever being employed. Now, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
somebody has to take the risk, and if you're an employee, you're not taking that risk. And but the contribution to the community and the good feelings that you get in building something that's your own is, in my opinion, unsurpassed. Um, but back to your point of resources, I mean, there are um, tools, there's knowledge. I mean, Ali, I am spending hours a day with artificial intelligence. Um, uh, it is completely exploded in my world, and I'm building all kinds of amazing tools for practice valuations and analyzing P&Ls. The amount of knowledge that's available now is like we've never been in a better place to be a business owner. You can ask artificial intelligence anything. Now, do you question the answers? Of course,
Yeah.
but it's all there. It's
Yeah.
all there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It is. It is. It's really wonderful to learn, to use it to learn more, right? To be able to analyze things that it was so difficult to analyze before, especially financial data and things of that nature. So I could not agree more. Okay, so let's move on to the Ask Ali segment, Mick. So we've gotten clients and people who are watching the show submit some questions, and so I'm going to ask you these questions, okay? So the first one says, Ali, I brought on an associate to help grow the practice, but now I feel like I'm giving up production without really seeing the upside yet.
Yeah.
How should I be thinking about associates from a growth standpoint? And Mick, what I'd like you to focus on is, if you don't mind, I mean, go ahead and answer it however you see fit, but can you also focus on the compensation side, like how much should I pay my associates? That's something that I frequently see come up where associates are asking for different numbers, and employers don't know what to do. And so maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this is a great topic because, again, going back to the earlier conversations about scaling, one of the things we talked about is adding doctors to your practice, and doing that in a thoughtful, strategic way is extremely critical.
Yeah.
I occasionally will have a phone call with an OD who brought on an associate prematurely, or they didn't have the infrastructure in place to support them, and the associate's wage simply cannibalizes the owner's income,
Right.
and that happens, and so you have to be thoughtful about when to do it, and I always start with looking at their efficiency first, the owner's efficiency, like, are you maximizing your time? Are
Yeah.
you getting close to that $1,000,000 threshold?
Right.
And, do you have patient demand? If you're getting close to that threshold, you've got patient demand, um and when I say patient demand, you're booked out a week or 2 or
Yeah.
more consistently,
Yeah.
and you have the physical space, the capacity to bring in a doctor, then it starts to make sense to add that associate.
Love
But
that.
if you're simply gonna plug in an associate so you can go fishing 2 or 3 days a week, you're basically trading income.
Right.
So you have to think about that associate revenue that's generated as incremental or in addition to the existing business that you have. And here's a beautiful thing. An associate doesn't have to be very busy to make the owner money,
Hmm.
because all of your operating expenses are already met. You've
Right.
already paid the rent, you've already paid the light bill, you've paid most of the staff. You simply have cost of goods against that new revenue that comes in from the associate. And you maybe have to hire another technician, or maybe an optician, or maybe an administrative person, but the every dollar that that associate drives into the business is extremely profitable, way more profitable than the dollar you generate as the
Right.
owner,
Yeah.
because of the operating expenses that are met. And so, you don't have to pack them with 12, 14, 16, 18 exams a day in order for it to economically make sense. In fact, usually you can get them 3, 4, 5, 6 exams a day. You can
Wow, that little. Oh, that's
cover your
great.
costs. Absolutely. And I built a spreadsheet, as you can imagine. I know you're
Yeah.
shocked. But I built a adding an associate tool that will help kind of work through the math of what it looks like. But I want to get back to your question of, like, compensation. There's been a real trend across the country in compensating associate doctors based on a percentage of collections.
Hmm.
So in the old days, it was per diem,
Right.
daily
Right.
rate, okay?
Right.
And I know that that still happens to some degree. There are salaried employees, but a big trend across the country is a percent of collections. I
That's
see
right.
that percentage range from, 13, 14% on the low end on the West Coast, all the way up to, 18% on the East Coast. It tends to
Hmm.
pay higher on East Coast. But the key thing for an associate to ask is not what my percentage is, but how much business can you drive to me?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because you could have a really high percentage compensation, but if you're not getting any patients, it doesn't matter.
Right. Right.
Or you can have a little bit lower percentage, but if the practice is driving you a lot of patients, the lower percentage could actually be better than a higher rate, lower volume.
Yeah, yeah, love that, love that. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'll, I love that actually, and that's something that I think a lot of young ODs who are listening need to think about. Because they might negotiate a higher percentage, but then they're not getting the patients. So what does it matter?
That's right.
So that's great. That's a
That's
great
right.
point. Okay. The last question is, Ali, I've been comfortably running my practice for years, but now that I'm thinking about retiring in the next several years, I'm worried I haven't positioned it properly for a sale. What are the key steps I should be thinking about now?
Yeah. So, love it when somebody has a foresight to think ahead and start
Hmm.
thinking about their exit. Too many times do we find sellers wait till the last minute or maybe have a health issue, and
Yeah.
now they're selling it under pressure.
Yep.
That's becomes this, it becomes very difficult. So
Terrible.
planning is extremely important. Um, Obviously, to get the most value out of your business, you want it to be as profitable as possible. Most practices, as you know, sell for what a bank is willing to lend, and I'm talking about a traditional sale, sell for what a bank is willing to lend a buyer. And the way the banks determine that is based on the cash flow of the practice. So they say after all the bills are paid,
Yep.
including a fair market rate to the doctors that provide the care, what's left over to service the debt on a loan? And they kind of back into the loan amount that
Right.
so having the highest cash flow and profitability in your practice really is what elevates the value. Now, in the private equity world, they apply a multiple to that number to come up with the value. But even in the private transaction world with a lender involved, it comes down to free cash flow. So getting your practice as profitable as possible, which means you're controlling your expenses, is one of the most critical things that you can do. But as a practical tip, I know our CPAs tell us to run a lot of personal things through our business because it
Hmm.
lowers our tax burden.
Right.
The only reason our tax burden is lowered is because our profitability is lowered.
Right.
So when you bury a lot of personal expenses in your business, I get the tax benefit of that, but you're showing on paper a less profitable practice.
Right.
And
Right.
that's just basically a different way of compensating you if you're paying
That's
for
right.
things out of your business. And so my suggestion is start to clean up your P&L. Stop running all those personal things through your business because I can tell you the banks are not going to take the time to ask you, is that a case of wine on the corporate credit card?
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it really comes down to the owner running a very clean P&L. So when the bank says, "Let me see the profit and loss statement and calculate our cash flow of this business so I can determine what's lendable," they really wanna see a clean, well-run practice that's minimizing expenses.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a really great point, and I think there are ways of doing that strategically so that you still pay little tax in those years leading up to it, but you're also setting yourself up, like you said, to show really good numbers for a potential sale to just another OD. It doesn't have to be a large group or whatnot, but just another regular OD who's looking to buy something. So that's exactly right. And for anybody who's listening, if you are in that category, right, you're 1 to 5 years out and you want to get strategic about selling your practice, make sure you reach out to Mick, reach out to me. We can introduce you to CPAs and others who are really, really wonderful in terms of like preparing your financials and your practice for sale. You don't have to change CPAs. You just kind of use them as a consultant and they fix things and get you ready. And so yeah, so please reach out to us on that. Well, Mick, thank you so much for spending, this time with us. I mean, it's been a great conversation. I mean, knowing, what ODs need to focus on in order to grow, I think was super helpful. Knowing what to focus on and appreciating kind of who they are and what they want out of their career, I think is a huge tidbit that I hope people really sink their teeth into, because that's what it's all about. It's about being happy about your life and being happy about what you do on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for sharing your wisdom. So do you have any parting words before
No,
we
no,
leave?
just, again, thank you for the opportunity. It's always fun to chat with you. I so am, feel privileged to be able to do the things that you and I get to do together, and it's,
Yes.
again, truly one of my favorite things to do is to put our heads together and try to help some ODs in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. And if anybody wants to learn more about Vision Source, if anybody wants to learn more about what Mick does, as part of the leadership of Vision Source, or if you want to attend these events that we have, they're open to non-Vision Source members, right, Mick? And so we'll put that information and those links in the bio here, and so feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll share with you. We basically hold it 3 times a year. We try to hold it every 4 months or so, and it's a wonderful time. So thank you. And if you like this episode, please make sure to like, comment, or share it, and of course, please subscribe to Ali Off the Record. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.